G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Swordplay GDS podcast of round 23 of 2026. It's been a long season. We're almost there to the end of the home and away rounds. And look, we brought in some budget upgrades along the way. Hopefully, you guys can see that we've got some improved camera quality, but we've also got some slides for today to go through as well. Before that, how are you, Rossco?
Yeah, look, mate. I don't know. I'm good, but just not a good week for GDS. Not a good week in the footy. But that means the only way is up, isn't that right?
It is right. I purposely skipped over the fact that we got up in the GDS Cup, the proverbial GDS Cup, that is. But look, how did you go in across the comps last week, Roscoe?
Look, a little bit average. My highest finish was actually 36 in Challenger, so I've dropped down a little bit in the seasonals. Just a few things went wrong. Obviously, Naz pulled the string. I had high salary across all comps on him, All Stars, Plats. And then two sort of rogue, maybe not rogue, pod picks. I just sort of missed. I thought Brian Myers would have a better game than he did against Essendon at GMHBA. But obviously he sort of went down, spent a bit of time on the bench managing the knee, and then never really got into the game. And then I was out on Saturday as well, missed the news that it was raining in Adelaide and not really the perfect weather for Riley Thilthorpe against Richmond either. So he didn't get much on the board. And then between those two, knocking out Naz's score with injury sort of meant I had to carry both. And just, yeah, a bit disappointing. The other one was Dan Houston. We thought perhaps Dan Houston might be the one who gets the role. Instead, Josh Dacos racked it up and put, I think, double the score on him as well. So a bit disappointing to go Houston over Josh Dacos there. But I thought truly that he would get the kickouts and he would be the one. Josh Dacos might struggle a little bit more, but was the other way around. So not to be for me. I'm not in the cups. I'm a little bit behind in the seasonal leaderboard. So I reckon I'm going to start throwing a bit of caution to the wind this round.
That sounds very good, Roscoe, because I think it's one of those things where there's probably three types of coaches right now. The coaches that are outside of the seasonal ranks, the prize card draft sort of thing, they will just throw caution to the wind to get that round win. Then you've got the coaches probably sitting on the edge of those prize card drafts. They can't really move up, but they could move down, and I reckon they might play a bit straight back. And then you've got the coaches that are probably still gunning for those competition wins, and they might also be throwing caution to the wind to try to get up into those really, really good positions up the top. So interesting to see how it pans out. Personally, our best finish was 5th in champion. It's one of those comps where finishing 50, you barely move up because of how good the competition is really at the top end. So sitting 7th there, sitting 3rd in 22s after finishing 14th, and got 14th in Sunday Showdown as well without playing an all-star because I'm out of the comp. So can't really do much there. Look, there was a big sort of, as you mentioned, with Thilthorpe and Myers, two very poor scores. Houston in that mix as well. I know that there were some other sort of players that underperformed. Dane Zorko looked a bit worse for wear at a certain point as well. But look, now we're moving into thinking about, okay, with Naz being injured, if you only had Naz, you would have been at such a big advantage. And so that's where it works for some, it doesn't work for others. So let's move on then into, if you haven't signed up to GameDay Squad yet, and this is the first time you're watching a GameDay Squad video, please use our code word BUTCHER. You get yourself 3 sort of common packs worth $20. Upon verification of your account, you also get a further 3 packs. I put a QR code in the bottom left corner for you to go straight to the GameDay Squad website. And Josh and I will be coming out with a how-to video for dummies. So not actual dummies, but a GDS how-to video that way. So if you had just signing up, we will have you covered in the coming weeks, especially with finals just around the corner. All right, so if we move forward then, we got some feedback on last week's potty. Very good feedback, constructive and good feedback. And I'm just going to shout out a couple of legends here. Fevolution, Maxi, and Rod Todd. They all mentioned they would love to see some graphics. Discussing our locks, pods, and avoids, bringing up stats when discussing them too. And it wasn't a hard thing to do. Maybe a little bit of time had to go into it, but I loved it. We loved it. And we're going to be coming up with the design pack as well for next season, just putting everything together. But for now, I think a PowerPoint has never gone wrong. So we're going to start off by looking through our round 22 review. And Rossco, do you want to take us through how we went in round 22 in terms of our locks, pods, and avoids?
Yeah, look, I'm seeing a lot of red and orange here next to my name, and not a lot of red and orange next to yours. So I feel like I might have let the squad down a little bit this week.
No.
But where I did, I don't know, I guess go okay. I went okay. I picked the two most obvious players of the week in Goulden and Dacos as my standard and Sunday's locks. Connor O'Sullivan, a little bit disappointing. I thought at GMHBA he would just go a bit better. I'm not really sure why he underperformed. Don't think he's injured or anything like that. So just a bit of a disappointing score there. Dan Houston, obviously touched on him. I wish that said Jay Dacos instead. Would have been really nice. Billy Dowling obviously couldn't really replicate his feats from the week before. It was wet, so he didn't get much of the ball, but he did get 6 tackles. So I reckon he still will get another chance to play again for the Crows this week, although tougher matchup. So probably not for me against the Dockers. Tim Kelly went pretty well. Got a consistent midfield role at the moment for the Eagles. And then Luke Jackson, 116. Bit of a disappointing avoid when I think both the rucks that I played in the end went below that. Finn O'Sullivan was a decent avoid with 73. And Jack Graham, I thought, wasn't really going to go super great, but he kicked a couple of goals, got to 89, which is not the worst for Sunday Showdown, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't think it was too bad. There's sort of the Dowling. The weather was perfect, almost in a way, for him to really just pile up the tackles. Just couldn't get there in the end. Just going through my locks, Baz Smith in standard and Whitfield in Sundays. Can't complain. Kirch, he's got that halfback role and he delivered with the 109 against the Doggies, which was a good win for North. I've got a couple of North fans. They're pretty up and about after that. Bailey J. Williams delivered with 115. I didn't have space to fit in the other Williams, but he was also in there. Didn't do too well, especially even in primetime perspective. It looked as though that the Dogs don't really have a single ball distributor back there. And that probably didn't work in the favour of the Bulldogs, Bailey Williams. We'll touch on him a bit later. Cooper Lord delivered with the 91. His kicking is immense. I just love the way that he can arc his kicks into sort of a bucket. Toby Bedford, unfortunately, got injured early. Now, Rossco, you played him. I think I played him as well. But like in terms of he was looking quite good at the start, and then he got injured, and now he's a tester player this week. What's going on?
Yeah, he was off and rolling, 28 at quarter time, and then had a bit of a sore back, sort of tried to manage it through the second quarter on the bench. And then Kingsley came out just after halftime and basically said, he's going to have to get up with it. He's going to have to just play on. And then they put him on the field for about 2 minutes, and then he took him straight back off, and they said he was no good. So gave me a little bit of false hope. He was maybe going to redeem it and get a 50-point second half, but then he just, nowhere near it.
Nowhere near it. Well, look, in terms of the avoids, I might give myself a little pat on the back here because I was thinking they would go low, Petrarch and Wilkie, but below 50 was not on the cards. Petrarch with the 46 and Wilkie with the 48 as probably the best avoids so far this season, which is saying a lot since we're round 22 when we're doing this. Willem Derza went the 68 and also Petrarch with the 46 on Sundays. Now, I saw a video of him cooking for 15 teammates yesterday. I didn't see Leo Lombard amongst that mix.
No, he wasn't there.
He wasn't invited. Wasn't invited to the cookout. But no, I won't say that. I was going to say maybe if Petrarch applied a little bit more on the field as opposed to the kitchen, maybe we might be looking at some better GDS scores.
Well, I think between him and Matt Rowell, they collectively averaged 125.
That is true.
Not a bad outcome.
Kudos to big old Matty. 213. He was getting almighty close to the record set by Naz just a couple of weeks ago with the 235. So 236. So very well done there, mate. All right. Let's move on into round 23. And I've got the defense versus position data for the last round of rounds, courtesy of our partners, the Stats Lab. If you haven't checked them out yet, go over to the Stats Lab website. There's a number of membership options which you can use to sign up to access some of this data. Some of this data is free. Some of it is to be paid for. But one thing that Rossco, Dia, and I can agree on is that this is the best GDS data going up and about. So go on if you have an access there. What we're looking at here is we can see that the Doggies are the easiest matchup for defenders or designated kicker and the like. Port is second, the Bombers are third, Richmond are fourth. So no real surprises there, considering the eye test. I thought that Collingwood may be one of those teams, but not to be. But one thing that we did know is that Carlton, Brisbane, Hawthorn are the three hardest matchup for those designated kickers. And so Zorko even getting to the 120 on Thursday night Friday night was probably tick. So Roscoe, where do we start when we talk about defenders for this week, especially with no Naz? Now we're really drawing into some of the more poddish type players.
Yeah, look, I think no Naz definitely makes it hard. I mean, we've lost a lot of options across the year already with Naz, Dale, Sinclair. There'll be others that I'm forgetting about. Zorko's been in and out. I think the defensive line, we have to look a bit far and wide this week. I think there's maybe, 3, maybe 4 that I'm quite keen on. And then the rest outside that, you could sort of throw a blanket over a few of them. I think we have to play Whitfield and Ash, Dane Zorko. And I think we have to try and capitalise on Nick Blakey versus Essendon as well at the MCG. Mm-hmm. Those are the 4 that I'm pretty keen on. But after that, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah. I'm not confident.
Look, Zorko and Whitfield for me personally, tick. I want to do a case study on Lockie Ash because there's something about his form recently, and whether it's the Giants looking a little bit away from him. He's playing in defense. He played the whole game against Gold Coast in defense, but didn't look near it. He scored that 81, and he's only gone above 120 once in his last 3, 120 or above, and that was for a 120 in the last 3 games. So it's one of those questions where I'm not too sure. Blakey also is in good form, and you sort of don't want to miss if he pops off. Just be wary that Sydney as a team, I reckon, apart from Errol Gould and amongst those stars, are sort of susceptible to an in-game management or management at the end of games. So, for instance, in the game against Port Adelaide on the weekend, I believe that Charlie Curnow, Tom McCartan, Isaac Heaney, and Callum Mills all spent the last 20 minutes on the bench. And Chad Warner, Nick Blakey was fitting that sort of 5th bench position as well. So it's really one of those things where, you're like, where does this really sit? And so I think you play Blakey given the matchup and the fact that it's the MCG, but he's not a home run pick, in my opinion, like as a sort of thing. I'll give you a couple of players, Roscoe. Now, I want to talk about Jake Bowie. The reason why I talk about Jake Bowie is that he's what sort of points designated kicks have been given up to against sort of Port Adelaide. So we can see that Lockie Whitfield had a 153 in the game that he kicked that goal. Dane Zorko, 159. Jasper Fletcher, 128. Brad Hill, 158. Naz, 145. So in the last 5 games, so it's one of those matchups where I think he could really capitalize on them. And Jake Bower, we saw the Christian Sailors playing a little bit as a forward as well. So he's one that I'm very keen on. Cal Wilkie. Roscoe, I need you to talk me out of this pick. Because yes, he's had a couple of stinkers in the last 2 games, 48 and 69. But his last 2 against Richmond was 130 and 162. Now, cast your mind back to the first game against Richmond, which you guys played earlier this season, right? I reckon Cal Wilkie was on about 35 at halftime. Wouldn't have been anything more. And he exploded in the second half to get to that 130. At the G, yes?
Yeah.
You think this is a matchup which you're looking to chase?
Well,
no nose.
Someone has to use the ball down there. I think off topic, it gives a big boost to Brad Hill as a forward. Yep. But I think the other one who's sort of taken the kick-ins the last few weeks is Liam Stocker. Obviously, don't think he's an ideal GDS option, although I think he scored in the 90s or something like that the last 2 games that he's played. We just can't back him to have a ceiling score versus the likes of Wilkie, who could get involved in the chip mark stuff. Yeah. Now, I think with it being less likely that he has to be super accountable, I mean, our season is kind of over. Richmond don't want to win. I can see Wilkie getting a lot of loose ball, taking a lot of marks. And the games against Richmond tend to just be, scrappy turnover fest as well. Like, I think we beat them last year by 3 points. and it was the worst game of footy I've ever watched because both teams were just bombing it inside 50 and just turning it over. Like, that's the kind of game Wilkie would thrive in.
What did Cal Wilkie score in the game? 162.
Yeah. So I don't know if I can talk you out of it, actually. I didn't consider it, but with no Naz, I suppose someone has to get a bit of extra ball down there. And I think we might as well bring in Alex Taru, St Kilda, that is. I think he'll be back in. He's off his suspension, had a week in the VFL. He'll come in and probably play a bit more key back, which I think could free Wilkie up as well.
Yeah. No, nice. I like it, mate. So we need to sort of branch out a little bit from here. And two other names that I'm sort of got here is the old trusty Josh Dacos, in terms of he's gone 149, 134. Yes, he's coming into a Hawthorn matchup that is the third hardest for designated kicks, but he was playing as a midfield on the weekend. And so whether Jordan De Goey comes back into the side will probably dictate it. But if you're Collingwood, everything is going through the Dacos brothers. So it feels pretty hard to look past either of them, really, in terms of their GDS capacities. Roscoe, I'll open up the red carpet for you to talk about who we think is one of the biggest pods for this week, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, definitely a great option this week for us. Playing for Port Adelaide up against the D's, who are down there in a bit of a matchup, but I think he is sort of assuming a bit of a midfield role as well. Jace Burgoyne, look, his scores over the last few weeks have been really good. I think you sent it to me anonymously over the weekend with no name, and I was like, who is this guy? I don't know who it is. And it was kind of shocking to see what he's been putting up. So you got those last three on hand for Jace Burgoyne?
Yeah, so his last four, in fact, 162, 122, 97, 130. You would take those scores from a defender, even the 97, as a score that's probably not going to drop out, but just is there. That's very, very good.
Yeah, look, and against the D's midfield, I'm sure we'll touch on it when we get to the midfield DVP, but I think at home, it's not the worst matchup for them. If Horne-Francis plays, do you think it knocks him a little bit?
It does, and I guess with Joe Richards in as well, that's probably where it's like, what does that midfield mix look like? And you're going into a bit of uncertainty. I was having a look at the data before, and the game against Brisbane, where you had Richards go off and Burgoyne went into the mix. There hasn't been a game where Horne-Francis, Burgoyne, and Richards have all been in the midfield to like really compare what their data looks like since the Butters injury, which is the tricky part. I'm just bringing up the CBAs on hand now, and when I'm just having a look here. Yes, here we go. So in the game that Butters got injured, obviously Butters had a bit of those CBAs, but Burgoyne was at 11% and Richards was at 12%. The following game against Fremantle, so the Fremantle game, Richards had 45, Burgoyne 52. Horne-Francis didn't play that game. And that was the game that Richards got injured in. So in the Brisbane game, when Horne-Francis and Burgoyne played, they got CBAs. Bergman got CBAs, but Richards obviously didn't play. So it's very difficult to sort of see what those three look like in unison. I think he could chance it, though, given that he's been a contested player. He's probably been their best player the last month, apart from Horne-Francis as well. Could chance it, I reckon.
Yeah. Definitely. I think another one.
The other part of it is, I was going to mention is Darcy Byrne-Jones is suspended this week. So even if Burgoyne doesn't play exclusive in the midfield, he's not going to be put on the wing, you wouldn't think, with how many sort of peripheral Port Adelaide players are currently in the team. So he may be going to halfback and could rack up regardless.
Yeah, look, I think Jace Burgoyne is definitely a preferred option in the midfield for them at the moment, rather than the wing. When you've got AI-generated blokes like Bemert and O'Brien and Lawrence running around for you, I think they need a Jace Burgoyne in the midfield, definitely.
Would you say this is the hardest line to pick this week, though?
I think I've probably struggled with this and the rucks, to be honest.
Yeah, we're going to have a good chat about the rucks, but I reckon let's move forward then and talk about the midfielders, because, again, we can see Port Adelaide at the top there, Richmond second, Essendon third, so Collingwood fourth. So when we look at those matchups, we got Melbourne coming up against Port Adelaide, which is good in terms of you're not thinking about GDS midfielders here. You're thinking about, well, technically in a way you are, but you're thinking about players that play in the midfield against that team. So we think that Tom Sparrow and Cozzy Pickett are two that are probably going to go very well this week, given the matchup data. You've got Richmond, so they come up against you boys. So in terms of midfields, I think it's more that under 22s perspective with the Hugo Garcia, Mateus Filippo, and Maxi Hall. Maxi Hall probably gets a big uptick with Naz, but we'll talk about Maxi coming up with the forwards. And Essendon, you've got Sydney. This is where I want to start this discussion, Rossco, because if this was round 5 and we had this matchup, I would say that Isaac Heaney, Errol Gould, and Chad Warner are all locks. But is that the case?
Well, at the moment, I've got Chad Warner and Errol Goulden in my midfield line at the moment. Last week, it was Heaney and Goulden. But this week, Chad. I just think his recent scoring has been more impressive. Heaney's gone under 100 in his last 2. Now, maybe I do end up just risking it and playing all 3. But I think Goulden is the clear pick at the moment. I don't want to go without him. But if I had to coin flip between Heaney and Chad, I'm going with Chad at the moment.
I agree. His last 3, Chad, have been 129, 125, 126. And this was it. So I've got the time and ground numbers here because Chad's been in-game managed against Port Adelaide. He had 63% time on ground against Port Adelaide, but 88 and 75 in the 2 games before that. Whereas Heaney's the one that's been in-game managed in all 3. So that's the little bit to, I guess, sorry, Heaney wasn't so much in-game managed against St Kilda, but the week before he was in-game managed as well. So that's where it probably shifts a little bit. Goulden's just been incredible. 157, 131, 169 in his last 3. You just lock and load him in. So let's say you go with 2 Swans boys. Who are you looking to supplement with those players?
I think Bailey Smith comes in against North Melbourne. Jordan Dawson stays in. Despite the Fremantle matchup, I think we just perhaps go from lower rarity on Dawson this week where we can. I think Will Ashcroft coming up against the Gold Coast Suns is another great pick as well. Nick Dacos, even though, again, it's a Hawthorn matchup, they're actually not the worst there. They're 7th. So Nick Dacos comes in against Hawthorn. And the last one for me, I don't know whether I'm going to get sucked in here or not, but Matty Rao. I'm looking past the 212. I'm looking even ahead to the weeks prior. And his form in the weeks prior has still been solid enough for me to think that it's a good play this week, despite that Brisbane matchup.
Yeah, he's been incredible. And the Brisbane matchup is a little bit of sort of the red flag in a way, in terms of Dunkley's gone to him in the past. But if we look at Rao's last 3 against Brisbane, he went 86, I believe, earlier this year. 120 in the semi-final and 168 the time before that. So he doesn't have the worst record. But the thing that's been so impressive for me with Rao in his last 3 games, his kick to handball ratio is all above 1. He's gone 1. He's had 16 kicks, 12 handballs in round 20, 19 to 11 in round 21, 28 to 12 in round 22. And that was in heaving rain as well. So he was looking to kick that ball forwards. But the tackle numbers are also there in the last 4. He's gone 11, 7, 9, and 16 tackles. So I think, Rossco, where you're coming from, I think it's a pretty good sort of ploy to go with. One other thing to note as well is that Carlton, which he scored 116 against, was actually the 3rd hardest matchup for him across his career. So he's now sort of breaking out of that mold of not being very good against teams that he's routinely struggled against, which is also good. How about a player like Lachie Neale? So if you're confident on Will Ashcroft, Lachie Neale's coming off the 167, coming up against Gold Coast, where he's gone 143, 142, 101, 151, 155 in his last 5 against them. At home. No human cluggage.
Yeah. Look, it's just this discussion again that we have, who do we take out? Maybe it is Dawson. Does that make Dawson, with the tough Freo matchup, a worse option than Neale with a positive matchup? Like, it could very well be that way. You know, is
Yeah,
it Nick Dacos against Hawthorn? Like, do they tag him? I don't know if
that
Hawthorn would
is.
tag him, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, at the moment, Nick Dacus is untaggable. Brady Hoff went to him on the weekend. He's got the 130. O'Shane Mullen went to him the week before he got the 130. It's like it doesn't matter who you put to him. He's gonna
Yeah.
score his regardless. I'm just bringing up some numbers with Lachlan Neal. It's gonna be Lockie, isn't it? Lachlan Neal, and Hugh McCluggage when they're in the same side. Now McCluggage they haven't played too many games this year, but it's an interesting because you would think that without Hugh McCluggage that Neil would score well, but with Hugh McCluggage in the side, Lockie Neal has gone 125 average over 12
Mm-hmm.
games. And without him, he's only gone a 108. So
Interesting.
there's a 17-point gap with him in the side compared to without, which is sort of counteracting what I would have thought. But this doesn't include the 167 from the weekend, by the way, where McCluggage didn't play. So I'm not sure whether it's correlation or causation. It's an interesting one.
Okay.
And
So Lockie Neal could be in there. I think that gives us, though, a fairly solid group. That's 8 that we've discussed so far. I think that gives us a fairly solid group of 8, being Baz, Dawson, Ashcroft, Rao, Chad, Errol, even Heaney, if you consider him a better option, regardless of the management, Nick Dacos, Lockie Neal. You want to throw anyone else in there at the moment?
Well, just one thing on Jordan Dawson as well. I'm not sure why it happened because I only tuned into the second half of that game. But when I was watching the game, Dawson was playing as the last man in defense, as like the ball distributor. He took all the kick-ins in the last quarter. Like, was this a move due to the rain, or was it to free up the midfield, knowing that they'd probably get on top of the Richmond midfield anyway? Was there any sort of tactical nous you can add to this, Rossco?
I don't know. I don't think Matthew Nicks has tactical nous. So maybe it was just Jordan Dawson going back there and saying, all right, boys, time to steer the ship and get us over the line here. Not really sure, to be honest, unfortunately. I don't know if I would mind that, though, a bit of a halfback role playing against the Dockers. I don't think it would be
Wouldn't
the worst
mind.
thing.
I think that would be very good. There is a player. Well, there's 3 players I want to touch on. Tim Taranto. Yeah, you're going into a game without Naz, and I'm just having a look at his stats at home, basically. Well, it's a bit hard because I just don't have where he played at the MCG.
Disgusting.
Yet,
I pick him every time in Sunday Showdown. He's disgusting.
So in round 21 against West Coast, he played the G and 19 through 15. So in round 21, he scored the 157. But before that, at the MCG, 124, 117, 109, 133, 83. So those 6 games were all at the MCG. And apart from the 83, you probably take all the other scores. Playing against St Kilda, which it's not so much the hardest matchup here, but I reckon with no Naz in there, unless Windhager is the one that sort of steps in, and he was sort of, I don't know if he was playing accountable for Walsh, but he didn't do a very good job of it, if he was. Whether Taranto could get a tag, but what's the point, right?
I don't think I'd be too worried about it. Marcus Windhager has been accountable for one thing this season, and that's his $800,000 a year contract. Don't worry about him as a threat.
All right. But
Taranto, I think he's a good option this week.
He's a good pick. You like him?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
we won't go to him.
I was going to say, I don't think I can go away from any of those plays that we've already mentioned for Taranto type.
That's what does make it tricky. Yeah.
But what I will say is I like Taranto more than either of the Bulldogs mids, Bont and Richards this week. Carlton, we are the 4th hardest matchup for midfields, and it shows. It genuinely shows in terms of the way that we're playing. It's not so much the contested type of game where players can rack up ball in congestion. The only way they're getting ball is through transition right now with the game style that we are playing. So that's what makes it difficult for the likes of, if you're not a Baz type, like for instance, Bont and Richards, they're probably good in that regard, but they get a lot of their pill inside that sort of congested situation as well. So is that a hot take to say Taranto is a better pick this week than Bont and Richards?
I don't know about Ed Richards, because I think Ed Richards in the last few weeks has just sort of been finding his ball regardless.
Yes, that's true.
Bontempelli's been a bit more up and down. I don't know. I'd maybe put them Richards, Taranto, Bont, if I had to go
Fair.
that way.
Fair. Yep.
But then again, they're all still probably sitting outside the Dream 8 that I'm looking at the moment. Although it is subject to change with trying to go for a spike round win, perhaps.
A spiked round.
A spike, not a spike round win.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said spiked.
No.
Wait,
go for a spike score with all the pods.
One more play. This is out there, right? But if Toby Bedford is injured, GWS just gave up 212 points to Matty Rao. Is Harley Reid? Could you go the Harley in this matchup? He was strapped up at the end of the game. He had a massive thigh corky. He's been copping it from the bench, twisting his ankle. He's just had a torrid run recently. I don't know how his body's holding up, but this could be one of those games, a generational Harley game.
No, I think if it was in Perth, I'd be much more inclined to do it. But given the fact that it's over out east, I don't think so for me.
All right. Fair enough. Was just putting it out there. With that, I reckon we move to the Rucks, Rossco. What do you think?
100%. Although I don't know which way the Rucks are going to move me this week because I'm very, very unsettled about which way I want to go with these guys.
There are a number of good options. And if Tom De Koning does not get up, it's going to throw a cat among the pigeons. Let's start with the top. So Geelong is the easiest ruck matchup over the last 5 weeks. And Roscoe, I'm going to read out their scores. I'm going to read out firstly the scores, and then you can put some scores to names, because when looking at this, I was like, there's absolutely no way I look at this and say that Tristan Cherry isn't a ruck option this week. 109, 138, 123, 160, and 147 are the last 5 ruck scores against Geelong. Do you want to guess some of those names in there?
The 160 would be Rowan Marshall, right?
Rowan Marshall.
What did you say? Before that was 147?
Yeah, from not a big
Kieran
name
Briggs. They lost to the Giants.
Kieran Briggs.
They played us.
Yeah, that's it.
And then
Gorney got the 123. Gorney got that 123. But then after that, against Geelong, yeah.
So where are we at? So we got St Kilda, Giants,
St Kilda, Melbourne,
then Gawn.
Melbourne. Yeah, Gawn.
And then they won again. What was the score?
138.
They won again at the MCG the week after they beat the D's there against Darcy Cameron.
Yes, Darcy Cameron.
Yeah. And then last week,
they
played against Essendon, Vigo Vicentini.
Got the 109.
Yeah.
That's filthy. A debutant scoring 109 is...
I don't think Edwards was playing, was he? It was Blitzarves.
He wasn't playing, but the thing is, Edwards has been playing. They've been giving up these scores as well. So, regardless of whoever it is, Geelong's rucks giving up bulk points. Cherry's last 3 against Geelong, even though he hasn't been in the greatest of form, he was. I'm just going to bring up when the other one was, but 154, 171, 114. And I'm just going to put it out there. He is my pod for this week, but I don't know if he's actually going to be a pod, depending on people's appetite for playing Cherry he's gone 164 against Collingwood. So that was a very plus matchup. We're just looking outside in. Geelong earlier this year at GMHBA was a plus matchup, and he scored that 154. Giants the week before that 159, and Eagles in round 2 plus matchup 168. So it almost feels like whenever he's come into a matchup that he should go well in, apart from Richmond, where he only got to the 104, he has done quite well.
Yeah.
Will Dawson is back on the side as well, so not Trembarth. Does this I don't know how to feel about this pick. Is this like a bulletproof pick this week, or are we looking starry-eyed?
Well, this is the thing, right? I don't necessarily have a great push for any others. I mean, Gawn has been really quite consistent. I mean, except last week he went sub-ton. But he comes up against Sweet away from home, which is the second hardest matchup. Obviously, Rowan Marshall can put up a score. Probably is more favourable if De Koning's out. Maybe he's just a pick regardless, because he's still got in the 90s with De Koning in there. Grundy would be coming off a rest, playing against Essendon, who are the 7th easiest. I think that sort of depends. If I look at the teams on Friday night and I see Vigo Vicentini there again, which I think is a very big possibility.
Brian
maybe Grundy.
Yeah, he could. He could come back in.
But Why did Nick Bryan go out? Was he managed?
I think he was injured. Wasn't he injured?
Injured.
He wasn't dropped.
So that's what I mean. Why would they drop the guy who has had a good game? You know what I mean? Just to bring Bryan back in. Not sure if I'm a big fan of that. If Essendon do that. And then Luke Jackson, I mean,
he was injured.
He's coming up against a refreshed McAndrew, I would assume. But still, there's question marks over his scoring power, even though it is at home and the Crows are a decent matchup. I'm just not sure if I could back him in over some of the others.
Can you go away from the form of Darcy Cameron? He hasn't gone below 130 in his last 5, I believe. The only issue for me is the dual ruck setup. Oh, sorry, 120 was 4 rounds ago, but the 130 before that. So can you go away from that?
Is it dual ruck, though? I don't think. Is Reeves
Reeves came back in. Yeah, Reeves came back in on the weekend.
He came back in, okay.
But
I knew he had been out.
He might go straight back out because they were playing Fort and Draper. That's all. Reeves played 41% time on ground, and Meek played 59%. So they were basically coming on and off for each other.
Well, that's the thing. I think if it's Meek only, I think that does turn things in Darcy Cameron's favour. If it's Meek and Reeves, I'm a bit more concerned about him. So maybe we just chalk this line up and say, look, it's a bit team dependent to see what happens because there's a lot that can happen. There's De Koning, there's Max Heath, there's Sean Darcy, Mason Cox, there's Ned Reeves coming in for the Cameron matchup. There's Nick Bryan for Essendon. There's Grundy. I mean, I know he's probably expected to play, but did they just give him a week off again and just bring him back in round 24?
I think Grundy will play. He'll play. But what's to say that if the game's out of reach, he isn't rested again? Because he had been looking banged up the weeks before that. But are we overthinking it in a way as well? But here's the other thing with Maxi Gawn, right? So Gawn's last 3 against Port Adelaide have been 142, 139, 166. But if Port Adelaide play Alex Van Wyk, even with Georgiades back, that's probably the one. If Georgiades is back in, then Van Wyk probably goes out and Vicentini's the second ruck. But for whatever reason, if you play Sweet, Vicentini, Van Wyk, and Georgiades in the same side, you've got 3 rucks, genuinely, Vicentini, Van Wyk, and Sweet, that could go up against Gawn, which feels pretty disgusting.
I feel like you've AI made up this Van Wyk bloke. Whatever he is.
He had 44% ruck contest on the weekend, and I know a great man in the community, the Blue Ballers. I shouldn't have said that, actually. He was locking and loading Jordan Sweet in, thinking he'd be coming up against a rookie ruck in Will Green, and here he is. It's Alex Van Wyk's go to go in the ruck.
A bit unlucky there. But yeah, look, that is a big consideration. If they're playing 3 rucks, I mean, surely Gawn's just going to struggle, you'd think, right?
Well, I don't know. Gorney's done in the past where just a Stanzi, but it might be one of those games where Gorney just spikes it forward and only gets the +1 as opposed to really the down the line ball. So we'll see. I think Cherry's in for me at the moment, and the second ruck is TBD. Is that the same for you?
I don't even know about Tristan Cherry.
You don't even know about Tristan Cherry, so you got 0 rucks locked in at the moment.
So I reckon Rowan Marshall's the one that's in for me at the moment.
Yeah. But is there anything to say that Cherry and Marshall, with the matchups they have, can't both go big?
Well, yeah, but then I guess Cherry would be TBD, I suppose.
Yeah. How about this? We lose TDK, Reeves, Will Green, one of the Port Adelaide rucks, and we're just stuffed with 5 good options in the rucks. This could genuinely happen as well, but we'll see. We'll see tomorrow. It's good that we don't have a Thursday night game, so we have a bit more time to think about this decision.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Let's talk about the forwards, and this feels a bit wrong because there's not really much point of putting forward DVPs when, in fact, all the forwards that we are playing in GDS are either halfbacks or midfielders. And so when we look at this, from a pure forward perspective, Gold Coast and Essendon are the 2 easiest matchups. And when we think about it, Gold Coast, like Brisbane. So you can think that Zach Bailey's probably fits the mold a little bit in terms that he plays forward, but he can also go into the midfield. So I think we'll start there and say that I reckon Zach Bailey's a very good selection this week.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. After that, we've got Essendon. So Swannies forwards, Charlie Curnow, probably not. But you could go there. Again, if you believe that he's not going to be in-game managed, or if he's going to kick 5 goals before he gets in-game managed, you can go there. Riley Thilthorpe did it a couple of weeks ago.
Yep. Sucked me in.
It sucked me in. And I guess we'll go from there and just move away from that a little, because you got Port Adelaide in third, and we talked about these two players beforehand.
Yeah.
Tom Sparrow and Cozzy Pickett. Yay or nay to go?
Yes, both in for me.
Yes. All right.
Then we look
where
at
we go
Richmond
from here
with their designated kickers. I'm looking at Brad Hill. He's in for me. And if we flick back to Richmond with midfielders as well.
Richmond fourth and midfield second. So
Max Hall is the other
Maxie
one.
Hall.
There.
Yep. He was the leading centre bounce attendee on the weekend as well. Even with Naz's injury. So Naz went off, Hall went big time, and he should be good to go. One thing, Rossco, that I will do is I'll just get a correlation on Max Hall with and without Naz in the side. Just give me 1 second. So
I think it definitely helps him.
Here we go. So with Naz in the side, 15 games, he averages 96, and without Naz in the side, he averages 113. So a 17-point bump without Naz in the side, which is very handy.
Very interesting. I think another
on the
one...
weekend, you can add the weekend's game basically as well. So that's a further 134 compared to his average of 95 otherwise.
Now, I think an interesting one for me this week, sort of middle of the pack here in the midfield DVP, is Toby Green. Obviously coming back in. I think he's going to play bulk midfield time against the Eagles. I think he's a better option than some of the others that we might consider more pottish this week. Pretty keen to pick him. But now, a big discussion point that I wanted to raise with you here is Harry Sheasel. It sounds weird to even say it, but he went under 100 when he played Geelong earlier on in the season. Yes, it was at GMHBA, but he did get the Oisin Mullen attention. Now,
did he? Was it
yes.
him or LDU? Did he get the attention? Okay.
No, he did. I was looking up to see who Mullen was sort of tagging. And there was an AFL.com.au article about his form so far in 2026 that said he kept Sheasel to like season lows. Does Mullen go to Sheasel again? Or do they bother? Like with a tag?
Ross, mate, it is one of those things where you genuinely could make a case for it. And I won't argue it. Like, it's one of those things where if you're in the position where if you want to go for a pod that you think could just get you out of a jam, the pod might be anti-podding the most popular forward in the game and running.
Yeah.
Like, if there's nothing to lose, that might be the way to go, honestly.
Yeah, because look, if he goes under 100 again, I think that of the names we mentioned, all of them can put up good scores. You know, if you found the likes of Logan Morris against the Gold Coast Suns, Charlie Curnow against the Bombers, these kind of guys that kick a big bag, then I don't see why they couldn't put up a bigger score than a 90. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm brave enough to do it because it is Sheasel. However, I think he does sort of fit the mold of the game style that Naz plays a little bit more than the game style that Dacos plays. Yes. And obviously we've seen Dacos break another tag after that. So I don't know if that's necessarily a knock on Mullen with the tag that he did, or whether it's just Dacos being that good.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know if we've seen Harry Sheasel like break a hard tag before.
Yeah. One thing that I will put into this mix, and I don't know, maybe it's recency bias, but if you're Chris Scott and you see the game that Luke Davies-Uniacke played on the weekend with 30-2, it's one of those things where we'll never know. Well, I guess we'll know at the game, but you won't let someone like LD have 31-2 again. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So
no,
it's a call. He had 10 clearances on the weekend as well. Probably the best game I think I've ever seen LDU play. So. Yeah,
but do you let Sheasel run around and have 40? You know,
what's more damaging, right? It depends. Yeah. It depends. Like it really comes down to how Chris Coffey is. How did LDU go in that game early this year? So he didn't have a good game. He had 24 and 5 tackles. So it's not
All right,
like not tagging him made a big difference anyway. So
I'll tell you now. It was round 8.
Yes, I got it. Yep.
Tristan Cherry went 154, which is good to hear. Sheasel
Yep.
went 97, and David Juniac went 96. Interesting times.
Aye. All right.
But yeah, look, Hill,
who are the other
Pickett,
forwards?
Barrow, Zach Bailey, and Max Hall, I think are 5 very serviceable options for us this week.
Yeah.
Toby Green is one I like.
Isaac Rankin. With
Oh,
the form. 162, 147, 116 last 3. Now, Fremantle, really as we see on the midfield DVP, are dead last. The hardest matchup. But the thing to note is Cozzy went big. Thomas Barrett went okay. And I think that Cozzy and Isaac Rankin are very similar players in the way that they go about their footy. So,
yeah.
What do we make of that? It's away from home as well.
Well, I didn't have him in. I didn't have him in at the moment. But look, with remembering what Cozzy's just done, and the fact that I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks that I'm not sure about Fremantle's credentials, maybe I just turn a blind eye to this DVP. It's very useful information, but maybe I do just pick Rankin this week regardless.
Yes, Fremantle's the third hardest matchup for forwards as well. It's a tough one.
I would love one day to be able to see the DVP in games that they lose. Because obviously they've won 17 or 18 games this season.
Well, they've only lost 3. It's not going to be hard for us to get that data.
Yeah, so I'd be curious to see the DVP in the game that they've lost. Because if you think the Crows can beat them away from home, then Rankin is a sound pick.
Yeah. Well, I reckon Toby Green, did he play in that game that they bet Fremantle? What did Toby Green score in that game?
Let's see.
I've got this up. He had 153 in that game.
Wowzers.
Wow.
Okay. Maybe Rankin is a pick then.
Well, you tip in Adelaide here. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, but Freo are not unbeatable.
They're not.
They should win. They should win at home, but they're not unbeatable.
Rossco, I'm just looking here, and I'm like, I've got to get this guy in. So Toby Green was injured in that 42, right? His last 8 scores uninjured are 106, 135. Oh no, sorry, not 106. Sorry, 106, 135, 153, 117, 90, 109, 126, 120. But his last game against West Coast was a 50, which was the game before that streak.
Jeez.
At Optus with 12% CBAs though. So
okay, and they're at home, and he should play more midfield.
Yeah. And the game that Toby did get injured, he had 42 in 39% time on ground.
I think we do back him.
For who?
I don't know. DBD.
We're gonna figure it out. All right. Well, Rossco, we'll move on then into the preview. The round 23 locks, pods, and avoids, and I'll give it to you to take it away.
Yeah, look, so we've touched on some of these guys already. Errol Goulden, I think Essendon matchup, his form the last few weeks just means we pick him. Spoiler alert, he's also going to be my Sunday's lock as well, but he is my standard lock. Jace Burgoyne, that midfield mix, playing as a defender, I think can be a good pick for us this week. And the D's are not the most awful matchup as well. Obviously, if Richards and Horn-Francis come back in, it could be a bit hard to gauge, as we discussed. But I think we might risk it for the biscuit anyway. And I reckon he's going to be a popular pick based on some of the trade market activity I've seen this week already. And my avoid is going to be Jarman Impey. Yes, the matchup against Collingwood is actually on the easier side. But with Carl Amon, James Sicily and the like in the side, I think they split their ball use a little bit more. And obviously he took advantage of them being out for those bigger scores a couple of weeks ago. And then, sort of dropped off again last week. It was a hard matchup against the Lions, but I think still better defenders for us this week.
Nice. All right, I'm going to take us away then. And my lock is going to be Will Ashcroft. Instead, I think he's just in the form that he's in. There was a stat saying that he's had 30 and 5 clearances in like 8 straight games or something like that, which is just crazy to think about. Tristan Cherry's my pod. As I mentioned before, I'm not too sure as to what his ownership, what his play percentage will look like when we talk in a couple of days' time, just because if he's the ruck against no rucks, then he should do quite well, as he normally does. And then Rossco, I'd say that John Noble's my void, and there's a reason for this, right? So we talked about before Brisbane being the hardest matchup, or the second hardest matchup, sorry, over the last 5 games for those designated kickers, the defender types. And we look at some of the data to support this. And on the weekend, we had Hawthorn, and none of the defenders went big. So Impey, Battle, not Impey, Battle. Impey, Sicily, and Amon. Sicily went 70, Amon went 65, Impey went 64. The week before, we had Billy Wilson go 79. I don't have the number for Ollie Florent offhand and Adam Cherra because they're playing as pseudo halfbacks at the moment. The week before that, Logan Evans only got to 68. So Liam Duggan got to the 115. He's the only player as a defender to go above 100 in the last 5 games. Archer Roberts only got to 89 as well. So I think that Connor McKenna's been providing some defensive attention to someone from the opposing team, and it might just be Johnny Noble this week.
I like it.
Moving forward then into the locks, Billy Wilson. So the doggies are one of the easier matchups for those designated kickers, and I think that Billy Wilson should be on the receiving end of some of that, which is good. They're actually the easiest matchup at the moment for those designated kickers. I've got Josh Lindsay as the pod. Now, GWS are middle of the pack for defenders, but given the fact that he was tasked with sort of taking on a bit more kick and distribution, that's good. And also, I got a bit stitched up because Roscoe sent through his picks for this slide, and the pod that I wanted to have is actually his pod. So he'll reveal that one. And my void is Riley Sanders. I wasn't sure which of the dogs forwards to put here. In terms of under 22s, Fraser and Sanders, I just don't really love them this week. In terms of the midfield matchup, we're quite a hard midfield matchup. Again, as I said, if you don't get on the outside, you're probably not getting it inside. And I was just having to think who's more likely to be able to get it outside. I think Fraser's probably that type. Sanders also still has the glove on his hand. Clearly, the hand's still bothering him at least a little bit, unless it's precautionary. So, yeah, I think Colonel Sanders is going to be my avoid this week in 22s.
There you go.
Here we go.
Alrighty. I've also gone with a Wilson as my under 22s lock this week. Darcy Wilson, I think, should see a bump in his CBAs, but even regardless, he has been going really, really well the last couple of weeks. And look, with the Richmond matchup, I think we can't really afford to miss out on him if he's going to be playing that sort of mid-wing, half-forward sort of role. He should be allowed the ball often. Now, my under 22s pod for this week in the forward line is going to be Jesse Detoli from the Sydney Swans. Earned himself a NAB AFL Rising Star nomination for round 22 for his performance against Port. 23 Stats Lab touches, 2 Swordplay Sausages as well. Very nice game from him. We're going to be implementing that Triple M style branding throughout our potties a bit more as well. But yeah, look, he had a good game. 8% CBA, so he wasn't really involved there. Has no touches on his heat map in the back half. But look, against Essendon, if you can pop up and kick another couple goals, get his 20 touches, she'll put up a nice score for us in the forward line. My avoid for this week is going to be Dan Curtin, purely on the basis that his midfield time did drop a little bit last week, playing against Freo, which is a hard matchup as well. Not sure if I like the scoring potential for him this week.
Nice. There's one thing on Dan Curtin that I just want to put in. Roscoe, when we were watching the Collingwood-Adelaide game together a couple of weeks ago, one thing was in the dry weather, Curtin is targeted a lot from kick-ins, and he could snag those big marks, but not so much in the wet weather. So I guess that's something that now you sort of can pick up. We can sort of pick up on. So if the weather's dry in Perth on Friday, then it could be a Dan Curtin game. But given the other midfield options that we have this week, I think he could also quite comfortably fade as well. Here are your Sunday's picks. Go on.
Yes. So Errol Goulden, again, won't touch on him. Dyson Sharp as a Sunday's pod. I think he is an under 22s midfield pick for us this week. But I don't know if it'll be poddish in that competition because his scores the last few weeks have just been absolutely huge. Even against tougher matchups, the likes of Geelong, he's just going really well. And yes, it's a Sydney matchup, but he is playing bulk CBAs. Yes, it's for Essendon, but look, I don't know if we can ignore him any longer. I think he's gone above 100 or very close to that each of his last 4 games. So I'm just bringing that up now. He has gone 116, 108, 113, and 105. So as a Sundays midfielder, we want to lock in as many tons as possible. I don't see why he couldn't do it again for us this week. And my avoid is Bailey Williams from the Western Bulldogs. As you touched on earlier, they don't really have a clear distributor back there. Lockie Jakes came back in and even muddled that mix a little bit more. So Bramble took a few, Jakes took a few, Bailey Williams took a few. But I don't think any of them are really playing that sort of quarterback role. I know you like to call it, that Bailey Dale was sort of playing there. So for me, he's an avoid this week in our backlines.
I like it, Rossco. And just very quickly on the Sundays mids, I think this is the hardest line, and I hope that no one's out there going to come for me when I say this, but I'm going to put some names out there, and these are probably the names that you'd probably be looking at, unless there's some that are just completely missed. You've got the 3 sort of Swannies boys. You've got the Blues mids, Florent even, Hewitt, Walsh, Chera playing as a halfback. You've got the Dogs duo, Richards and Bont. You've got Harley Reid, Clayton Oliver, Dyson Sharp, Zach Merritt. There are so many players to pick from, and I reckon in the semi-finals this week, whoever can nail those 7 midfielders probably goes the longest way. And I don't envy anyone, especially our boy Izzy, who's in the Sunday Showdown semi-finals. I do not envy your position, mate, because this could be a real classic, and all the best in picking out who gets rested from the Swannies in the middle of the game. And here we go. These are my picks. I think that Chadbourne is a lock for Sundays. I'm not so sure on standard just with sort of that rest factor, but in the time that he does play, he should towel up Essendon. So I'm pretty happy there. Jai Sarong is my pod. And the reason why is he's been the leading centre bounce at 10. He was the leading centre bounce attendee on the weekend and scored 137, 24 disposals, 11 tackles. And I know that he went into the midfield about halfway through your game, Rossco, to tag Naz. And he only scored 55, but on the weekend, he didn't look just as a tagger. He looked a player that was free and just able to do his thing whilst also keeping someone accountable, which was Horn Francis. And he did a semi-decent job at that before the Horny one got injured as well. And the last void there, Matt Kennedy. Now, you're probably looking at all those midfielders that you have options for, and I don't think Kennedy can be one in the mix. He's been playing almost as like exclusively forward recently. Yeah, and he's coming up into the Carlton matchup, former team, but last 3 games from 78, 39, 88, just not going to cut it against all those other names that you mentioned and I mentioned, Rossco, before. So for anyone that recommended a graphic, thank you. Hopefully this is what you were after. We're going to make this look a bit more nicer with our color scheme moving forward, though. So rest assured, it won't look as sort of pastel-y colored as this. Market analysis. Now, this is a new segment which Ganners was asking for. He said he would love a stock market discussion, maybe some trade, sales, purchases during the week, or top 3 value buys. We've done it a bit differently here, and Rossco, I'm not sure if you can exactly see that, but basically what this is the silver, gold, plat, and diamond sales off a specific player from about midway through last year. Now, there is a specific play in focus here. So the last 5 silver sales have been ranged from $2 to $2.50. Me knowing the player, I reckon that's very, very good buying. The golds have ranged from $7 to $2. Whoever got this card for $2 on March 26th, absolute steal. And the same goes for whoever got the plat at $3 on July 10th. The other sales have been ranged from $6.50 to $10. And there's something about steals in the most recent sale. $109 diamond for this player is very, very good. We can see the next cheapest after that's $150, but he's also sold for $310 within basically the last year. So, Rossco, I've given you a lot of hints there, especially with the diamond player, because I don't know many diamonds that are selling that $109 is a cheap sale for them. Who do you think I'm talking about?
I'm going to be honest with you. It's not actually your hints that have given it away. I believe I was involved in a bit of stockpiling here on the 30th of January with a couple of these guys' plats because as you said before that, it was $12. And then I'm sure if you actually zoom out before that, it was more like the $15 to $20 mark. So I thought I'll get a couple on, and then obviously he sort of got injured, which was a bit disappointing. But I thought, look, I'll get a couple in early. I think it might be Errol Goulden.
It is Errol Goulden. And well played, mate. And big news, Scobie, one of our Swordplay family members here. If all things go as they are right now, Errol Goulden will be a forward in GameDay squad next year. So the reason why I brought this in is you might have to do the Rossco tactic and start stockpiling some of these cards, because if he becomes a forward, we lose Sheasel from the forward line. We probably lose Rankin and Pickett as well. We might be looking at Errol as the F1 next year.
Zach Bailey, maybe, off the forward line as well.
Or I think he might stay in there just because he's playing like that 30% C midfield.
Brad Hill will probably go back.
Yeah, look, it's looking pretty grim, but we always think it's going to be grim, and there's always players that put their hand up. So
yes, definitely.
One thing for sure is Errol as a forward coming down. He might be the number one prize card if he becomes a forward. That's pretty tasty there. Anything you want to add? And all this data is thank you to the Stats Lab. So again, yes. JT, wonderful partnership we have going. And yeah, hopefully we can bring you something more like this in the upcoming weeks as well.
Yeah, look, I think you'll be hoping you might slide through to the keeper. I don't know if you're going to have a high price card pick here in the draft.
I think I'm drafting from 14 at the moment. So
maybe not.
I'm not really putting my hopes up to
maybe
have
not.
Errol slide down. But look, Jagger Smith at 14, who says no?
Who knows?
All right, this is our giveaway. On the screen, I've got 11. The 11, I believe, is this 11? Might be more. Total point winners or leaders at this point. I think
it's 14 there.
14, potentially. Thank you. Total point leaders in GameDay squad, but I've also got a couple of others. Oh, I know what you were doing, Rossco. Yeah, there's 14. Definitely 14. Now, I'm not going to say anything more. If you guys have picked up what's on this screen, it shows that you're watching through. If you're listening, I would advise you to look at the screen and do something about the screen. We'll leave it there. 5 more seconds. Look, again, very, very exciting. We have the Swordplay prize card draft with DR, Boz, Verns, and I on Sunday, 23rd, August 6th, Sunday, 23rd of August at 6 p.m. Sorry, I was just putting the two together. This for NBL. So if you have an NBL prize card, Cal will reach out to you very shortly, and we will be drafting on the 23rd. So very, very excited. They'll be on the Discord if you haven't joined as of yet. The links are down below to join that if you haven't. And Rossco, I believe that is our last slide. So thank you guys for watching. Is there anything that you want to finish up with?
No, look, I think after this, I'm still feeling pretty confident in my teams, but I might roll the dice on a few this week. So good luck if you're chasing seasonal leaderboards, if you're still in the cups. Hopefully we can guide you onto a pick that can get you over the line.
Well, look at it. Classic, right? I believe What is a Blinder had the Matt Rao prize card, and he won Classic by 205 points or something ridiculous like that. Like, anything's possible. It genuinely is possible. And in rugby, a first-time player won a comp as well. So if you haven't played GDS yet, I should have said this at the start, but if you haven't played GDS yet, this is the way to go. You can win basically from day dot if you can just nail the right picks. One other thing, housekeeping wise, that should be there for transparency is I believe that the wildcard round will be included in the finals competition for GDS. So if you're looking at sort of players for that, you want to be looking at 10 teams in sort of procuring cards for those competitions.
But keep your eyes peeled. We'll do a full sort of breakdown of how finals is going to work as well when we get the full info.
We will. Good luck, guys. All the best. And yes, we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, please let us know how you found these slides in the comments below. Hopefully, we were able to address as many of your feedback points as possible. Thanks, guys. Peace.
See ya.